So welcome to Unleash Learning TV, the place that helps you boost student engagement and unlock consistent and effective teaching for everybody. And because we mean everybody, this is our third part in our three-part series about inclusion, about differentiation, and now about co-teaching. So Richard, welcome back. Thank you for being here. I know you're on holiday and taking time out, so we really appreciate your time. So Richard, I don't know if everyone knows what co-teaching is, so could you give us a definition of what is co-teaching?
We define co-teaching as two or more people sharing responsibility for teaching all the students assigned to a classroom. So we want to make sure we emphasize that two or more. In most instances, it is indeed two people. But we don't want to limit your creativity and your thoughts about how to use resources. So it can be two or more. I certainly have seen co-teaching arrangements of 3, 4, 5, but again, predominantly it tends to be two. The most frequently occurring partnership in co-teaching is usually that of a content teacher, a classroom teacher, alongside a special educator. But we've seen relationships in co-teaching with teachers who support students who are learning, well, in our case in the United States, English, but learning another language. They have a different set of expertise, so they are combining their expertise with that content teacher. But it could be administrators, it could be related service personnel like speech language pathologists, it could be teacher librarians. Basically, it could be any member of our school community, including students. So it is two or more people, and that is a purposely chosen term because we don't want you to think it's just between two licensed certified professionals. It could be teaching assistants, paraeducators. At the primary grades, we might see community volunteers involved in this, and again, students themselves. We've worked in high schools where we've had up to 50 high school students enrolled in a 3-credit elective course in co-teaching, and then they're paired with adults across grades 9 through 12. Phenomenal resource. Two or more people sharing responsibility for educating all the students in the classroom. So if I'm in that room, it's not these are mine and those are yours. We both are teachers for all of those students. And when we say teaching, we're talking about the complete instructional cycle. They collaboratively plan, they teach, they reflect, they assess, they figure out how they're going to monitor and adjust together. Co-teaching requires trust, communication, coordination of effort, and common planning time.
Fantastic. Now, how does co-teaching fit in our discussions around inclusion and differentiation? Where does it fit in that conversation?
Okay, so I would take us back to that conceptual framework of the schoolhouse model. And you'll see that co-teaching is on the same floor where we collect data and determine what kinds of supports and interventions students might need. If you remember, the overarching goal is access and success for all. But moving up from the administrative support to collaboration, creativity, then we get to the co-teaching, the database decision-making that enables us to differentiate and reach our goal. Co-teaching is not synonymous or equal to inclusion. It's a practice, a part of it. However, I will say I have never seen inclusion working in a school where there isn't some co-teaching going on. And not every child who's identified as eligible for special education needs to be in a co-taught class. So with limited resources, we have to be thinking about who's available to co-teach, as well as which students need to be in a co-taught class.
So who benefits in a co-teaching environment? When you're describing that way, what was the benefit for that?
Our belief is that this is a win-win for everybody. If I collaborate with you, right, there are personal and or professional benefits to me. You have different strategies, different experiences than I do. You may have an ability to better relate with some students more than I do. I have someone that I can celebrate with. I can brainstorm when we have problems. We can generate solutions, right? So there are personal, professional benefits to me. Teaching is considered the most isolated profession. This takes us out of that isolation. There are clearly benefits for the students because we're increasing the ratio of instructors available for the students. And again, we have different ways of teaching, so they may better learn when something is added to or brought into the teaching from the person who is complementing in the co-teaching. They may better learn when people have different ways of teaching, relating to students, etc. There are benefits for the system because we have less isolation, we develop a collaborative culture, we have more of a esprit de corps, if you will. We have common purpose and mission, and kids are less likely to fall through the cracks. So there are multiple benefits. There are also research-based benefits. In schools that have been doing co-teaching, we have often witnessed greater inclusion, greater student achievement. We have seen schools where there are fewer discipline problems. Now understand though, co-teaching is so much more than simply putting two people in a room who learn how to play nicely together. They've got to know what they're doing, how to best utilize those human resources when they're there.
So Richard, there's 4 different approaches to this process. So can you explain those 4 approaches?
Sure. So the first of the approaches is known as supportive co-teaching. And in supportive co-teaching, one member of the co-teaching team takes a lead role in teaching the large group, while the other person is out and about among the students. They may be answering questions students don't want to ask in a large group. They may be facilitating students paying attention, getting out materials. They could be collecting data. They could collect data that they can feed back to that lead teacher. Who leads and who supports isn't or shouldn't be static. There should be some rotation in those roles. Many people start with supportive co-teaching as they get to know one another, the children, the curriculum, and the routines. It has benefits because the person who's out and about will see things that's not readily visible to the person in that large group role. The cautions are that if you have another professional in a room and all they do is function in a supportive role, you're not utilizing their resources. How are they influencing instruction? They also could be viewed as not equal, a non-teacher by the students. You might get resentment because I'm not feeling as if my skill set is being used. There are benefits and cautions to every approach. Your ultimate goal, though, should be to use supportive co-teaching the least because it has the least impact on student learning. The next approach is called parallel co-teaching, and it's the only one of the 4 approaches where we're not in large group instruction. Our co-teachers are each focused on a portion, a subset of the class. Our subsets could be doing the same thing in a different way, we're just dividing and conquering, or they could be doing very different things, right? So sometimes the students might rotate to us or we might rotate to the students. We could have our parallel co-teaching could actually involve monitoring and not directly teaching as students go through various centers and stations. The advantage of parallel co-teaching is it is the one approach that lends itself for the most differentiation to occur within the classroom because we gather data. And that leads us to the cautions. You want, for the most part, your groups to be heterogeneous of mixed ability grouping, because if you remove the academic, the behavior, the communication models, you're actually going to depress rather than raise achievement. You never put children in a group because they share a common label. It's meant to be flexible, fluid, data-based decision-making, and we're going to group, regroup, and make sure everyone works with all students over time. The third approach is complementary co-teaching, where we're both teaching the large group, but it would be clear to you that I'm directing content, but what you're doing is making it more accessible. So you could be modeling, filling in a graphic organizer while I'm explaining. You could provide additional examples, analogies, visuals. You could develop sentence frames, anchor charts, anything that's going to complement the instruction. And again, here our goal would be to not have one always in lead and one complement, but to begin to switch off on those roles. The last approach is team co-teaching, and it is the one with the most equitable distribution of duties. And if you went into a room and you did not know what my role was or what your role was, and you only saw us in team co-teaching, you would leave not knowing who's the content teacher, who's the teaching assistant, who's a special educator, whatever, because we look so equal. The power of that is that, well, when both complementary and team, both people get to utilize their skill sets, influence instruction. When we're trying this equitable team co-teaching, let's say I'm an access master. I'm getting to practice my content with a built-in content coach just as you as a content teacher are trying to do more things to facilitate access, but you have that built-in support. You ask students in a class where team co-teaching occurs, who's your teacher? They are clearly going to say, they are both my co-teacher. This is, as all of our topics, are big topics that we've discussed. There is a time and a place for all four approaches. They all should be used. But I want to invite you to go to my website, ravillabayridge.com, and go to presentations and look for co-teaching. You will see a compare-contrast matrix of the four predominant approaches to co-teaching, their potential benefits and the potential cautions, as well as the unique features of each.
You know, just as we wrap this up, it makes me think of how much pressure is on individual teachers. So I think the resistance sometimes to differentiation is everything's on my shoulders. But if you're co-teaching, it's a shared responsibility, and we each have our strengths that we bring to this to support more students. So I could see why people would probably be more open to different kinds of ways for differentiation inclusion, because there's a partner in this and we can do it together as well as the class itself. So, Richard, we're going to wrap this up, but I really appreciate the three parts for this. And as always, we've got a question for you. Now, we focus on inclusion, we focus on differentiation, and now co-teaching, and we really want to know, what is your takeaway from this discussion? We spent three parts because it's such an important key in the Unleashed Learning system. So, as always, the best conversations take place in the comment section. So let us know, what was your takeaway? While you're there, you can grab your Ultimate Classroom Setup Guide. That's a free ebook that we help to set that classroom. You remind me of all the great work happening in our profession. So I really appreciate your time.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, and I wish all of you success in your journey with inclusion.
And we are cheering you on. We will see you next time. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. Do you and your team want an evidence-based system that you can apply in face-to-face, online, or in blended environments that makes learning stick? And we mean stick for everyone? If so, come join our virtual program, How to Unleash Learning, Class of 2020, and learn the system that makes learning stick for everyone. For more details, jump over to unleash-learning.com and we'll show you how to get started.